And welcome to Family Recipes with Erika. Thought this would be a really nice addition to our YouTube channel, so here it goes. This is our family recipe of pernil, which is a roast pork made Spanish style. Now, depending on what Hispanic culture you come from, depends on what you call it. Puertoricans call it pernil, Cubans, we call it puerco asado, so it just depends on what culture, what Hispanic culture you come from. Anyway, so let's get into it. Okay, so what you will need is obviously a pork. I recommend the pork shoulder with the skin on top, or you can use a pork butt. That works fine. Just make sure it has the skin on top. My personal preference, which is the more traditional form, is the pork shoulder. Anyway, so I usually go 10 to 12 pounds on one of these because we like leftovers, or typically if I make something like this, we're having people over, or I can send some little containers to my neighbors just as a friendly gesture. Anyway, so your ingredients is going to be dried oregano, salt, fresh chopped and minced garlic. I highly recommend fresh garlic. I would not use jarred, although you could and it's faster, but the flavor is like night and day. Fresh all the way, all the time. That's what I highly recommend. And then sazon, any kind of sazon that you want. I use the one that has azafran in it, and then another version called Sazon Tropical. Figured why not? It's not going to hurt it. And then lastly, your adobo. Now you can use any brand of adobo, but I mix mine. I go with a standard or regular adobo. You can get the Goya one that's got the red cap, or you can use the Badia brand. And then Goya also has another blend that has bitter or sour orange in the mix. I use that one as well. So I mix the two together, and this is for your rub later down in the recipe. As for equipment, you'll just need a good roasting pan. Make sure it's, deep enough that it's going to hold juices. This pork is going to create a lot of juice, and you want to make sure you have a pan that can handle that juice. And I would put your roasting pan on top of a oven, like a really strong cookie sheets, just for precaution. I standardly use one anyways, or you can use, I guess, the baking rack in your oven. I always put it on some kind of a shallow pan or a cookie sheet, if you will. And then saran wrap. You will need quite a bit of that, and foil to cover your pork. And our next step here is to use your saran wrap. Just cover your workspace in saran wrap. This helps a lot in preparing the pork right on top of the saran wrap. It makes it easier. So at the very end, you can just wrap it up. Okay, so here I have my pork. I have taken it out of the packaging, rinsed it off, and if you want, you can pat it dry a little bit. That's up to you. I usually don't. I just forget, honestly, but I have in the past. Anyway, so as you can see, I have my wooden mortar and pestle, a garlic press, and a small little cutting board. And I'm starting with the garlic. I am mincing the garlic really well using my garlic press. Now I am using large whole garlics. I don't know what kind of garlic this is. I just know they sell it here at our military installations grocery store called the Commissary, and I love cooking with these. They're easy to cut and they're super garlicky, and I actually prefer working with this kind of garlic than the regular. But if you have regular garlic cloves, that's fine. Just I would use 5 or 6. You can never have too much garlic with seasoning this pork. So go to town, go put as much garlic as you want in this baby because it is going to be really good. The more seasoning, the better it comes out. I guess you could say I have about a good maybe 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons of garlic. I usually do make out quite a bit more than this, but for the sake of the video, this is just to give you an idea of the ingredients and how to put this together. It is up to you how much of these ingredients, the ratios you want to go with. So now I am opening up a brand new thing of oregano, and I put about another, I would say good 3 to 4 tablespoons of the oregano. And then I add some salt. Now easy on the salt because all the other seasonings are salty already. So I wouldn't go crazy with the salt. I would do maybe 2 teaspoons should do it. You don't want to go crazy with it, but you do want to have some salt. And then you put it in your mortar and pestle and you just mash it down really good until it turns into like a paste. So with your pork flipped on its back, I guess you could say, you want the skin to be on the bottom because the only part you're going to be really heavily seasoning is going to be the meat. So flip your pork upside down so that the skin is laying on your surface. Then you want to take a knife and you want to poke holes in your pork. Poke as many holes as you want. The more holes you poke, the more holes you're going to fill with that seasoning mixture we just made, and the more flavor that will permeate throughout your pork when it's finished cooking. Okay, and with your spoon, a small spoon or like a grapefruit spoon, and your finger, just start taking that filling by the spoonfuls and stuff that pork. Stuff the holes that you just poked into that pork with that filling until there is no more filling left. Now, if you want to, you can go back and make more filling and add more holes, or add more filling to the holes that are already there if you feel it needs more. That is completely up to you. There is no right or wrong. And at this point, your kitchen is going to be smelling a lot like garlic and oregano, and the smell is going to be permeating throughout at least the bottom half of your house if you have a 2 or 3 story house. But your dining, kitchen, living areas are going to start smelling like the seasonings at this point, and it is just going to be a wonderful, wonderful smell. Anyway, and yeah, I mean, your fingers and your hands are going to smell like garlic and oregano, but it's nothing dish soap can't handle. And, you know, I'm so used to it. It doesn't bother me, but I know some people don't like that smell under their fingernails or on their hands. I use Dawn dish soap, and that works just fine in getting a lot of that smell out when I'm finished with the whole thing. And a quick tidbit here, in case you didn't notice, I was also putting some of the filling in the crevices of the meat. So that is another option you have in using the filling, is really rubbing it and spreading it in those crevices. Okay, so moving on, I am grabbing our seasonings, which is the adobos and the sazons, and we're gonna start pouring a generous amount of these seasonings over the pork and rubbing it in with our hands and just massaging it in really well. The sazon gives the pork not only the flavor, but it gives it a beautiful golden color. So you will know it is fully seasoned when that pork is completely colored in that golden color with the sazons. So here again, a generous amount. You don't have to put a little too little. No, just like what you see in the video, generous. Don't hold back. There again, this is one of these recipes where you can't really it's really hard to go too far and too much. So generous amount. And have fun. I mean, this is where you're putting the love into this, into this recipe. And here I'm flipping the pork so I can season the skin side of the pork. And yes, you do want to season the skin. It will come out delicious and flavorful, and the color will be beautiful and gold when it's finished. And then the smell too, as it's baking, you will have more of that, Spanish seasoning smell coming out of your oven. Instead of just, pork skin, without seasoning, which you can do. There are people that do that. They won't season the skin, but I personally season the entire pork, inside and out, the entire thing. And I do not hold back. And it comes out delicious. And we have made it to the final steps of seasoning this pork. So now I am just wrapping it up in saran wrap, and I'm adding more saran wrap to it because I want the seasonings to be tightly wrapped on that pork. I don't want it to be leaking out in any way. The tighter the saran wrap, the better. So then I put it on a plate and I put it in the refrigerator and I let it sit overnight and let it just marinate. Now you can let it sit in the refrigerator for up to 48 hours, no more than that. But really it's good just doing it overnight, 6 to 8 hours at minimum, which is why I say overnight. But if you really wanted to give it a crazy punch, you could do 48 hours. I have done it that way, but I have learned over the years that it's really not necessary. So yeah. And it's the next morning at around 11 a.m. and I have my oven preheated to 350 Fahrenheit or 170 Celsius if you are in Europe. You will bake this for 6 to 7 hours on the middle rack, and you will want to place your pork in your pan with the skin facing up. And this is where your foil comes in. You want to cover your pork for the first 2 hours of baking. After the first 2 hours are finished, go in and take off the foil and let the pork continue to bake on 350 or 170 Celsius until around 6 hours. You want to check it at the 6th hour because sometimes these porks are finished at about 6 hours instead of 7 or 7.5 hours. It just depends on the size pork and it depends on your oven. Now in my situation, my oven tends to bake a little faster on the outside than the inside with my food. So my skin got a little dark around the edges and I was noticing it was getting dark kind of quickly. So I had to go back in and cover it with the foil. And when it was finished, I took the pork out of the oven and I simply lifted the skin off of the pork, which should be tender enough that the whole thing should come up in one piece, very tenderly too. And you can simply put the skin in a separate baking dish, put it in the oven and let it crispen until, to your liking basically. Now I put it on the top rack and I let it bake extra for about an extra 20 minutes to really get it crispy. And there you have it, a beautifully baked, delicious, tender pernil or puerco asado that just effortlessly pulls apart with a pair of tongs or even a fork. What I do is I will shred it, I will cover it in foil and let it rest. And as the family comes in and eats the pork rind as an appetizer, I will make the sides. So your traditional sides are going to be things like tostones or sweet plantains, mofongo, which is very popular in Puerto Rican groups. It's basically plantain. It's like a mashed potato, but using plantains, and it's full of garlic and olive oil. Oh, it's just delicious. Then there's yuca, which is putting more of a Cuban flair on it. We typically, as Cubans, will eat it with black beans and rice. And yuca. On the Puerto Rican side, you're going to have more of the yellow rice and pigeon peas, which is arroz con gandules, and maybe some mofongo. So it just really depends. You can intermix these side dishes with this, and I mean, you can't go wrong. All of it is delicious. It is good. Anyway, so I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope you try this recipe. If you have, please let me know in the comments how it went for you. And if you have any questions, I will try my best to stay on top of the comments and respond. But yeah, anyway, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season, and I will have more family recipes coming down the pipeline throughout the holiday season, just to share a little bit of how we do the holidays here in our family, from my mother's Irish American side to my Cuban side and my husband's Panamanian and Puerto Rican sides of the family. Anyway, so we will see you guys in the next one. And if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe, hit the like and comment. We would really love to grow this channel and our community. Anyway, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.